제 젬버도는 힘이 장zon을 모는 젬버가 겨다 바거 다른 검산도 실물도 돈바도 제 장라 기점서를 저러 저기 장검선 저걸 뒤집셔는 일로 지금 번조장랑 소란도 공기 또반 버르 신지로 공기 또반 버르 신지로 공기 또반 버르 신지로.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all the sentient beings, please give rise to the unsurpassed and supreme bodhicitta.
대덕을 섭쇼를 정내 롱담바 토버르케로 양군디 비티나 대정서반 코란집시아 직된들 쇼노 스케바은 원매 강직 상계 팀 찬투니 셈츠르치 비티 그즈글랍타바던 숑차라던 초 또장 흥업브르시나 강석대 가랍zambu 상계 동거티스 창친 게르포르 께르네 롱담바 토버른 여로 양군디 비티스 대정서박 서티피케이션 직된들 쇼노 스케바은 원매 강직 상계 팀 찬투버르 께르나간 송고네스 나면 머통자 스탁들 함이되어 부슴 속바 롱쇼버는 여로 양은 가라 호드메 바짱메 바건고 롱고 시메니 디피티스 대정서바 림보치 넘버 자라지 샤인 직된들 쇼노 기반 원메 강직 상계팀 산 양디제 대정서바 점처럼 시험답지 스토블레 상주 상화 첨부 사이냥부 짜르네 장테 비모이 빌 항아 살랍 시그네 존던데 란더크도 소로 존던데 다음 더트르 타브르 샤테 레름 랍쇼 비심질 남기 점밥당음 제버 체총 라그자르나 가레티아 악직도 소놈 라롱스 쇼바당 가레티아 퓨르 소놈 라롱스 쇼바당 가레티아 갸프적 동적 와르도 소놈 심볼라 롱스 쇼바 요나 디 김슨 집시르라 존든 데기 달랍탄도 소르티 제존든 데기 샹주성와 첨보 사이냥 볼랍 까르차랍다 까땅들 심치사삼 길 헤이 푸트응가 짜르다 코피 강즈거 남라 자용랑가 심친 남기 짐밥당 범제베 치종거 남적 조브르샤오 사이냥 보 교기 러브르 뇽라 일라 종식도 니 촐랍담 버샤오 데네 샹주성와 사이냥 부 존든 데 락소라 락소 존든 데 다금들 독밥 독배 삼버는 도도 되네 존든데지 사이냥 볼랍 까르차와 자용랑가 게르보당 게르보 단난 돈당 룸보 쳔보당 단난 돈당 게르 룸보 쳔보당 쳔덕 쳔보당 게르기 쳔보당 잠제르기 쳔보 라속바 때더 신더 라속바 때더는 신더 르마비 워보네 존 야오당 크바당 원바당 롱와당 런모와 남라 속비 원보 멋성와 남람 차파나 르제르보 침보라 속바 때더랍 짐밥 짐버 도피체 샴바 침보당 아마비 셈당 짐빔당 소당 담비르고네 그 무지 셈진 담칠라 캬비 짐밥 시바감 잘랍 짐도 찍바가 냠버 마장 워 용을 쉬나 르제르보 침보 때더라 속비 끈거롱고 시마니 갭적 정당 sombo 상계람 초반 버비 소놈담 냠버 토보 대치지르제나 르제르보 침보 라속바 신도 고르와다 르마와다 원보 멋성와 라속바라 셴바 심침보르키니 테르트 짐버시비 소 대덕는 갭적 동적 나도 rum보체스나 던던담 버티르나 제당 구당 롱슈 소담 바너 무마고소 양 사이냐보 마온지테 남스 겔보 침보돔 던난돈 속네 종 잠지 침보 버지 셈진 대덕 곰바담 추르텐당 상지지 끄즈기담 샹주상 끄즈기담 냥토지 끄즈기담 나상지 끄즈기 소 자르버티르나 겔보 침보라 소바무스 랑랑가 대덕람 추밤버바감 짐밥타나 디누카라 ხსმ기 ვარდ გაფშინგი კომონტობ ღდეა ფზმ სობალა ლონშობრენ გერო გატრ ჟიმბირგივისა ლანამი ბიფშანჭბდ ხმوارშინა დინუ გერბო ჩიმბოლა სობაკარვა 지 난다 딱다 참바 침부 곰팡토브른 게로 사이냥보 마온 지르네 남스 게르보 침보네 종 잠지 라소바테다 거흥운지 상지람 상지김 추르텐다 곰바당 송롭다 끄즈글 라소바 간즈 젠기 좀장 락브르 시밤 통나 게르보 침보 게르보 라소바 남기 테다 지르수 시비 심케네 랑랑급 시바가마 잔랍 시트 찍바네 종테 간즈 갭적 동적 남기 짐바시 발라소빔 제란 적브르 시트 찍나 게르보라 소바테드 탐체데 갭적 동적 남스 딱든 콜로지르 게르보 침보 리툰 토브른 게로 대덕 남냠덕 젠 짐바시 바딱 갭적 동적 남스 stagder gyapchin namji gyarpurten tobran gyoro kachin churten dang gumba namjim dun da gersa te da lana mi bi shanchib da ngu season na gyarbo ne zon kanzag te da tamchi sanji ji lam jabran gyoro ti nan da qar namr min bim drewe na khudam e ba tang thai ba yeno sai nyambo maung jiten nams gyarbo chimbo ne zon jamze la so ba te da namjir gambo da napa da jmala so ba tona te la shamba chimbo da dambe sim kaji kiba sam kajik tsam kiba ne tedglar mandang zaptongdang marcha la so ba jimbab tangni dewa lap ko prshena di phayum sam gimi kiba to te karab japchak nang karab japchak nang da tagd gni tsami liv dagbur jirwa tang karab japchak ni ji nang da tagd dola rechik dagbur jirwa tang lariang zob san ji ji komo to ngansung gni saktan da martong ne zon karab japchak tongchak namse yang dingor ji jazam ya nawe matubran jero sai nyambo maung jiten namse gyarbo ne zon jamze la so ba te ta khater ter jimba jeni son khodam me ba to ba yeno karti lana mi bi chanchib ki ngui tsi zin na gesa mangnyong kangyang rong tamchit tartik zogba san ji ji komo to bi gerin gerne karwa nerkip tsangba dang gyapshan dang korlo gero gerbu komo tobne mu tobanır mu mago so deni dina sai nyambo kyoji semjer namla yongsu kırne semjin tamji ji der tar da flabra shawo tamji ji der tar flabra sai nyambo maon jitne namse rigjiwa mo kanjik san ji ji tambandara gesa chongzu jubate 자녀가 시마당 득전점 시비장 텔레토베 파연 호임 손도메 바고 사이년보 마원지는 남스 리기오 뭐 강지가 산지지 끄즈기당 잔주상 끄즈기당 란산지 끄즈기당 코라 코르로지르 끄즈기 남 토네 텔랍 점바금 쳐버시는 손은 후담에 바토르테 딱들 함이데어 퍼즘 소바 토발 농쇼브른 여로 카텔라나미 비šan집도 흥고위 찌즈나 디 손은 호임 손도메 바고 사이년보 마원지는 남스 리기오 뭐 강지가 타바 침붐 도르데담 차네 디 츠익직감 츠익직점 투버 게르네 데라 럭비삼비 계정 토바담 거르시바담 짐바담 초반 버버시나 강석템 제베 침보 후드메 바담 타이바 토바 유노 카텔라나메 비흥고 라나메 비šan집도 흥고 시즌나 디 소놈게 회놈 손도메 바고 사이냥보 마운 직네 남스리 기오므 뭐 강지거 산지짐 저데나 곰바다 타바 짐보 zonramadan 단네 직네 스테노 사르바테 달랍 짐바금 초반 버르나 타바 초반 버바금 타바담 총사라담 돈 시바당 기베 달모자로 시비 냐와 남양 지그르드 제라 남라 지그소 시바당 사르바 장 사르장 시바 공데 먹직네 멍볼라 그마 시나 테드 탐체장 제 섬치 낭더 딱더 르japchen 남지 저원 저로데 테드글레 짐바 시비 강즈가 남지 딱동 콜로 지르 저보 저네 담비 출랍 테네 japchen 테드 어더르시바 요노 사이냥보 마운지네 남즈 리디오 뭐 강지가 산지 기탄 반더 게스탐 참 시바테 대양 같은 짐바금 초반 버와담 출텐당 곰발라 지소시바당 손럽 기스템 자만에 좀 뻔이가 지가 담을 듣던 지금 심막 지금 치츠그 게위사와 남장라나미 비šan집도 흥위시즈나 디 파르티와 동적 잡적 남스 라나미 비데발로 저브른 겨로 카테 게위사와 대덕장 랑게 쳔마다 년코르다 라니 라팜비체도 흥오르 시나 팀 제와 양르티와 섬기와도 데발로 저브른 겨로 데람 제와 추토버 지르뽕와 지샤오 사이냥보 짐박동위 제던 켄지르 남버 작바나 테르트르요노 사이냥보 사버 모놈 김돌레 짐비 파윤 주벌 레거테 쳔바고
What are we teaching today? We're teaching the Ksitigarbha Sutra, right? I didn't get it wrong, did I? So for the Ksitigarbha Sutra, let me first share an efficacy story with you. In the past, in the state of Thai, there was a person with the surname Chen. He was very filial to his parents. He built a house for them. He made sacred statues of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Avalokiteshvara for them to make offerings to. Later, after some time had passed, this person, surnamed Chen, fell ill and then departed from the human world. After about 2 hours, he came back to life. After being revived, he began prostrating to his parents while crying. Then he told them about his experience. In recounting this experience, he said that when he departed from the human world and traveled to the Bardo, he never stopped feeling gratitude and filial devotion toward his parents. When he arrived at King Yama's place in the Bardo realm, He never expected that the statues he had made were present in King Yama's hall. Moreover, when he arrived there, these two statues began to welcome him. From the left and right, they welcomed him. King Yama also showed him great respect. At that moment when he arrived there, the two bodhisattva statues said, "Why has our patron come to this place?" At that time, King Yama said, "This person, surnamed Chen, has exhausted his lifespan." At that moment, the sacred statues told King Yama, "Our lifespans do not have a fixed measure. If one creates merit and virtue, one's lifespan can be extended." At that time, King Yama looked over his records again, his scrolls. In the end, it did indeed say there that if one makes sacred statues or paints sacred images, one's lifespan can be extended. This is the method for extending lifespan. Actually, through making statues, he could have 40 years added to his life. The first 20 years would be extended for fulfilling his filial duties. The next 20 years would be extended for receiving care from his filial child. At that moment, there was a Yama god dressed in green who told King Yama his filial child, meaning his son, only has 10 years of lifespan remaining. At that time, King Yama said no matter what, the lifespan of Chen and his child must be extended. When he heard this, he awoke and returned to the human world. When he returned to the human world, from that time onward, he had tremendous faith in Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. He lived for a very long time, and he shared his experience with people around him. So from this story, we can also see that making statues of Ksitigarbha and Avalokiteshvara for one's parents actually brings great benefit to the one who makes the statues as well. Most of these efficacy stories come from the very famous successive Tripitaka from the Han region. The stories here were likely related to the personal experiences of the compiler at that time. So many of the story plots are quite similar to one another. In the future, when it's convenient, we can also share other stories with different plots with everyone. This is something everyone should understand clearly. Through a story or through a case example, we can also find our own reflection in them. Why is that? Because while we are living in the human world, we can actually make statues of Ksitigarbha. While we are living in the human world, we can also gild Ksitigarbha statues with gold, and we often rejoice in others listening to the Ksitigarbha Sutra or receiving its teachings ourselves. This generates incredibly inconceivable merit. So for this teaching on the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the audience is not as I initially imagined. It's actually quite good. Everyone should listen with great interest and joy. So I'm thinking that ideally, since it's now August before the end of September, I hope to finish teaching the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Because to complete one teaching, everyone actually needs to spend a lot of time. For all of you, listening to the teachings is not easy. A lot of time needs to be devoted to this. For me, it's the same as well. Actually, I really look forward to it, to complete teaching one sutra. We still have the Uttara Tantra and some other teachings that haven't been completed. When the causes and conditions are fully present, we will continue to teach them. So that's a brief introduction to the efficacy story. Next, today we will teach chapter 10, Comparing the Conditions and Virtues of Giving. The meaning of comparing, everyone knows, is to measure or compare the merit of giving. Because even when giving the same material thing, the merit of giving differs in accordance with your motivation and the field of merit. The differences in merit can be extremely vast due to these different factors. The same donation of 100 yuan, but because of different motivations, some people's merit is especially great, while some might be just ordinary. So here it's called comparing the conditions and virtues of giving. At that time, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva, through the blessing of the Tathagata's mighty spiritual power, actually even bodhisattvas depend on the Buddha's blessing and miraculous power for everything. Actually, we as Buddhists should also have this kind of grateful heart. Actually, we should be like this too, shouldn't we? For example, disciples of the Buddha, whatever abilities they have, whatever realizations they have, should be closely connected with their benevolent teacher and lineage masters. There is a very close relationship there. Some Buddhists nowadays, when they gain even a little bit of reputation or a little bit of ability, they forget the kindness of their lineage masters very quickly. This can truly be called ingratitude. So, a bodhisattva as great as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva Mahasattva even frequently says in the sutras that it is through the blessing of the Tathagata's mighty spiritual power. From this, we should also understand that every person should have have this kind of grateful heart. Through the blessing of the Tathagata's mighty spiritual power, he stood up from his seat and then he knelt before the Buddha, before the great assembly. The kind of kneeling prostration we discussed before is according to the Indian custom. Then he joined his palms, prostrated. After prostrating, he addressed the Buddha, saying, "World-honored one, I observe the beings in the karmic paths, the beings in the 3 realms and 6 paths who turn according to their karma. When I compare their acts of giving, some are very small and some are very great." What this means is, if we compare the same virtuous deed, the same act of giving, for some people the result they obtain is very simple, while for others the result they obtain is extremely, extremely great. So what is it like? With the same act of giving, some beings receive merit for 1 lifetime, while for others, with the same act of giving, they receive merit for 10 lifetimes. Some beings receive merit for 100 lifetimes, and some beings receive especially great merit for 1,000 lifetimes. So the merit that beings receive is fundamentally different. For example, if 10 of us go to a monastery and each person takes out 100 wen to make offerings to the Sangha or to make offerings to Buddha statues, these 10 people, each person's motivation, the goal of their motivation, the way they form their motivation is different. The money they give is 100 wen, but actually the merit they receive is different. Because of this 100 wen, some will receive merit in 1 lifetime, some in 10 lifetimes, some in 100 lifetimes, some in 1,000 lifetimes, and some even more. So when we study this sutra, everyone should also understand the importance of motivation. It is especially worth understanding clearly. So he said, wow, why is this so? Giving the same thing, some people receive so much, while some people don't receive much at all. So why is this the case? I only wish, World-Honored One, that you would explain this to me. I hope the World-Honored One will explain this well to us beings. Please explain this clearly to us. We don't understand why the same thing, given to the same recipient, has such a great difference in merit. At that time, the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, right now in the Triastrimsa heaven, in this heavenly palace, before this entire assembly, I will teach the Dharma. This scene is very grand. As we know from before, there were so many ghost kings, various kinds of spirits, non-humans and celestial beings, so many of them. In such a great gathering, I will speak about comparing the merit of giving by beings of Jambudvipa. In the Triastrimsa heaven, in their heavenly palace where they dwell, I can speak mainly about the situation in Jambudvipa because Jambudvipa is a land of karma. Other places such as Uttarakuru and some other places are lands of fruition, so they directly enjoy the results of their karma. Therefore, for these beings in Jambudvipa, I will analyze the merit of giving and the differences between greater and lesser merit. You should listen attentively. I will speak for you. So you should listen very carefully and attentively. I will proclaim this for all of you. We've discussed this before. At that time, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva addressed the Buddha saying, I don't quite understand this matter. He still had some doubts about it here because he had also said earlier, I don't know why some merit is so great while some merit doesn't seem to be that great. So I still have doubts about this. I still cannot determine this with certainty. I'm a bit unclear about it. I only wish, World-Honored One, that you would proclaim this to us. I joyfully wish to hear it. I am especially interested and want to hear this principle very much. Actually, when we listen to the Dharma or attend classes, everyone should have this kind of interest and joy. This is very important. Every time we go to the shrine hall for class, or now we rely on radios or computers, using these methods to listen before listening, we should have a sense of joy. I am about to receive Mahayana Dharma teachings. In one's human life, this is especially rare and precious, so I'm very happy. Some people, when they are about to do work that they especially like before doing it, they have a special sense of joy. So, you see, with Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, he also has great interest in hearing the World-Honored One's teachings. For us too, regarding the profound meaning of Mahayana Buddhism, whenever we have the opportunity to listen to it, it is something rare to encounter even in hundreds of thousands of kalpas. The Dharma is rare to hear, human existence is rare to obtain. We should also joyfully wish to hear it. No matter which virtuous spiritual teacher we listen to the Dharma from, we must have a sense of joy. We must have interest, not like, oh, today I have to listen to class again and attend a tutorial session. How annoying, how distressing, so tiring. I'd rather have a good sleep. If I just sleep, then I'll tell a lie to the Khenpo or Khenmo later. I'll say I'm sick. Actually, I'm not sick at all. I'm just a bit sleepy. Treating listening to the Dharma as a kind of pressure is very bad. We must feel that it is especially rare and precious, like the sense of joy of enjoying nectar. We must joyfully drink the nectar of wondrous Dharma. We should have this kind of attitude. So then the Buddha explained the reason to Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, because Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva really wanted to hear it, and we really want to hear it too. Actually, we have the same interest and joy. All these words spoken by the Buddha are now all preserved in written form. So if we have this interest and joy, we will receive the same merit as if we were listening directly before the Buddha. So then the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, among the beings of Jambudvipa, there are kings, ministers, prime ministers, and great officials, as well as great elders and great Kshatriyas, those of royal lineage or of noble lineage, and also great Brahmins and so forth. These are the nobility, those who have wealth, fame, status, and careers, these kinds of people. When these people encounter those of the lowest status, the poor, the lowly, or even those who are especially, as it says here, crippled, disabled, mute, disabled people, mute, deaf, mentally deficient people, and also the blind, those without sight. People who are handicapped in various ways, such as these, those whose sense faculties are impaired, whose faculties are not perfect, what we call disabled people, or the poor, people who are especially pitiable. When the kings and others just mentioned encounter these people, these kings and others, from kings all the way to Brahmins, as just mentioned, because later there are frequent references to kings and others. We should understand that kings and others refers to all these people. Actually, the word others includes wealthy people, ordinary people. All those who love to practice generosity are included. When these kings and others wish to practice generosity, if they are able to be endowed with great compassion, a humble mind, and a smile, they should not think, I am a king, I am a Kshatriya, I am a great Brahmin, and be especially arrogant. When some people practice generosity, they perform in a very arrogant manner. Like saying, just give them a bit of money, you go arrange it. They are especially arrogant like that, without any trace of a smile, with a very gloomy face. You go practice generosity. It won't work like that. As truly great kings and great patrons, on one hand, they sincerely think these people are so pitiable, and genuinely generate compassion from the heart toward these beings. Then in both their conduct and their mind, they should be especially humble and modest, never displaying any sense of superiority or arrogance. In his conduct he is gentle and smiling, never putting on an attitude of looking down on others or acting as if he were above them. I once told the people working at our foundation, when they go to visit students who need sponsorship, some of the teachers seemed to speak in a way that sounded especially condescending toward others. I told them, we really shouldn't act like that, including when our school enrolls students. If you can accept them, then accept them. If we truly cannot accept them, we should still speak with kindness. We should not use a tone that insults or ridicules others. In this life, perhaps we have wealth or ability, but in the next life, none of that is guaranteed. So when we ourselves have just a tiny bit of worldly merit or worldly power, we often develop a sense of pride. This happens very easily. So it says here, if one is endowed with great compassion, a humble mind, and a gentle smile, personally giving with one's own hands, giving universally to all, not giving to some individual people here while not giving to others, or being selective like that. It's not like that. One should give equally to all pitiable beings who are in need, or have others practice generosity on one's behalf. Moreover, in the process of giving, one should use soft words, words that are especially pleasant, gentle, and warm. Actually, this is very important. To use especially gentle language, comforting language, very harmonious and kind language. We often speak of loving speech, soft speech, or we can say harmonious speech, using this kind of language. In this way, body, speech, and mind are all already complete. The mind carries compassion, the body should be especially humble, reverent, and with a smile. Then as for speech, it should not be in a contemptuous or insulting tone. We should practicing generosity in this way. Everyone should remember this too. We will probably often do some virtuous deeds, especially when doing some charitable and philanthropic work. We will encounter some people who are especially pitiable. Actually, the hearts of these people are very weak, very fragile. When they themselves have to ask others for help, they already feel uncertain and lack confidence and especially fragile in their hearts. At that time, the people they encounter, they will remember that person's expression for a lifetime. They will definitely remember the expression that person had. So in the process of practicing generosity, we should be like what is taught in the Ksitigarbha Sutra here. Body, speech, and mind should all be relatively mild, harmonious, and gentle. This is the way we should practice generosity. In this way, these kings and others, in the word others, as I just mentioned, means all the people mentioned earlier are included. The merit and benefit they receive is completely the same as the merit and benefit from making offerings to Buddhas as numerous as the grains of sand in 100 Ganges rivers. It is completely the same. Everyone should be clear about this point. You see, the merit of giving to these blind people and others is the same as the merit of giving to Buddhas as numerous as the sands of the Ganges river. Venerating Buddhas but not venerating beings, what kind of reasoning is this? How can there be a teaching like that? Where did you see it? In the way of the Bodhisattva, it also says this: some people venerate the Buddha, but do not venerate sentient beings. This is truly absurd. What kind of reasoning is this? Why is this so? These kings, Brahmins, and so forth, when facing the poor, the lowly, and those who are incomplete, actually generated the compassion and bodhicitta of the Mahayana. For this reason, the merit brings such vast results. For hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, they will constantly be endowed with the 7 treasures, not to mention food, clothing, and other necessities. These don't even need to be mentioned. What is the reason for this? It is because they are endowed with great compassion. Why was it said just now that making offerings to the Buddha and giving to a blind person or giving to a disabled person are exactly the same, or might even surpass the merit of making offerings to so many Buddhas? What is the reason for this? It is because they generated the bodhicitta and compassion of the Mahayana. For this reason, their merit is that great. So when we practice generosity, if we give with a selfish mind, the merit is not very great. If we give with a truly altruistic mind, then that merit is extraordinarily great. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but the treatise on a great man says, giving alms to one person with compassion, the merit is as vast as the earth. If you give to one person with a compassionate heart, that merit is extraordinarily great. Giving alms to all beings with a selfish motivation, the merit accrued is as small as a mustard seed. If you give for your own sake to many, many people, to all sentient beings, even countless beings, the result you obtain, it's like a mustard seed, extremely small. We know that when we compare the earth with a mustard seed, the earth is certainly much, much larger. Similarly, is the merit of giving with compassion greater, or is the merit of giving with a selfish mind greater? There is an especially great difference between the two. The treatise on the great perfection of wisdom also teaches that for ordinary worldly people, their generosity is equivalent to a kind of transaction. It's called market trading, a transaction in the marketplace, whereas a bodhisattva's generosity is entirely selfless and pure. The difference between these is still very great. What appears to us as the same gift, but the results obtained are indeed different. So the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom teaches, although the alms being given are the same, the amounts of merit accrued vary depending on whether one's motivation is superior or inferior. Yet the amount of merit gained is not the same. What is the reason for this? It depends on one's motivation. It depends on the difference of one's motivation, the difference in the superiority or inferiority of one's motivation. If the mind is great, then the merit is very great. If the mind is not great, then the merit is not great. In the past, Shariputra made offerings to the Buddha, offering some food to the Buddha. Then the Buddha, upon receiving the offering, immediately gave it to a dog. He asked Shariputra, which is greater, the merit of your offering to me or the merit of my giving to the dog? Shariputra said, it should be that the Buddha's merit is greater. Originally, one recipient was the Buddha and one recipient was a hungry dog. For us, what would we choose? We would certainly make offerings to the Buddha. But actually, because Shariputra is a Shravaka after all, he still had a degree of self-centeredness. His recipient was the Buddha, who is extremely remarkable, but this merit is not that great. Then the Buddha gave to the hungry dog with a compassionate mind. What did Shariputra discover through his wisdom? What Shariputra discovered through his wisdom was this: The merit created by what the Buddha had done was actually greater. On the surface, it appears to be the same food being offered, but Shariputra's recipient was the Buddha, while the Buddha's recipient was simply a hungry dog, an animal. So why was the Buddha's merit actually greater? It was because of the Buddha's mind. On the one hand, he possessed a vast and expansive mind, and on the other hand, he possessed immense compassion. When Shariputra made offerings to the Buddha, perhaps his offering was still mixed with some degree of selfish motivation. Whether we are making offerings or practicing generosity, our motivation and intention are absolutely crucial. Although in Buddhism, our recipients do still make a difference. For example, regarding the field of kindness, there are our parents and elders, those recipients who have shown us great kindness. As for the field of compassion, there are beggars and the deaf and mute, these kinds of beings. And then there is the field of merit, which includes everyone from the first bhumi all the way up to Buddhahood, all those recipients who possess a certain degree of spiritual qualities. If our mind is very pure and our motivation is very vast, even if your recipient is not particularly pure, you can still obtain infinite and boundless merit. I have seen it taught in the account of the previous lives of bodhisattvas that when practicing acts of generosity, even if the field of merit is not pure, if you are able to generate a vast and expansive mind, even though the field of merit may not be very pure, if you generate a vast and expansive mind, the karmic results will be immeasurable. If we ourselves are able to maintain our practice with bodhicitta or give with a pure motivation, the karmic results will still be immeasurable and infinite. Some people might say, I made offerings to a certain guru, but it turns out he was a fake guru. What should I do now? Your field of merit was impure because your own merit was insufficient. However, if at that time your motivation was to propagate the Dharma and benefit all sentient beings, and it was for the sake of all infinite sentient beings throughout the world, then even if the field of merit itself was not very pure because your motivation is pure, there will still be merit to be gained. You all are so sensitive. The moment I say something wrong, you immediately notice it. So even if the recipient is not pure, one can still obtain merit. Therefore, our motivation and mind are truly very important. Next, the sutra says, furthermore, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are kings all the way down to Brahmins, here, from kings down to Brahmins, these people are referred to as donors. If they encounter Buddha stupas or encounter Buddhist monasteries as well as Buddha statues, whether they be copper statues or clay statues, gold statues, silver statues, and so forth, including statues of bodhisattvas, statues of shravakas, and also statues of pratyeka Buddhas, if upon seeing these statues they personally prepare and arrange offerings and practice generosity, here offering and giving basically carry the same meaning. When they see these Buddha images or Buddhist monasteries, when they encounter these fields of merit and make offerings, then these kings and others for 3 kalpas will become sakras and enjoy supreme and wonderful happiness if they are able to dedicate this merit from their generosity to the Dharma realm with the aspiration that all infinite sentient beings throughout the world may attain the ultimate fruition of enlightenment, the state of the Dharma realm here, dedicating to the Dharma realm. In Chinese Han Buddhism, we often speak of dedicating to the Dharma realm. Simply saying dedicate to the Dharma realm is not very easy to understand. But actually, this merit is primarily with the aspiration that all infinite sentient beings throughout the world may attain the enlightenment that is non-dual with the Dharma realm. If they dedicate their merit in this way, then these kings and others will constantly reborn as great Brahma kings for 10 kalpas. In our worldly realm, the kings should be considered as having the greatest merit and blessings. They will obtain this kind of extraordinary merit. The Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are kings all the way down to Brahmans, these kinds of people who encounter the stupas of former Buddhas, those who have already entered parinirvana, such as Buddha Kashyapa and Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha stupas of Buddhas who have already manifested parinirvana in the past, or the temples and monasteries of these Buddhas, or the sutras that have been transmitted by these Buddhas, or images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if these have been damaged or destroyed or have fallen into disrepair or become broken, if you are able to generate the aspiration to restore and repair them. In former times there used to be many damaged monasteries. When I was young, no matter where I went, I would frequently see these kinds of monasteries, these ruined temples. There were some sutra texts and images that were damaged damaged. Nowadays, it's actually quite good, truly. It's acceptable, except for a very few countries where Buddhism has been destroyed by other religions. The vast majority of monasteries have already been restored. Perhaps it's only in some individual monasteries where we can see some wall paintings that, after such a long period of time, may have been washed away by rainwater and are currently deteriorating. Or there are some statues that need maintenance and repair. Other than that, looking at the overall situation in our past, roughly during the era when I was a teenager, you could see all kinds of damaged stupas and Buddha statues everywhere. Some mani stone piles were all incomplete and fragmented. Nowadays, from an overall perspective, basically everything that needed to be restored has already been restored. Of course, there are still some that need maintenance work. For example, relatively old temples and such. We must certainly find ways to repair and restore them. These kings and others, whether they personally undertake and manage the work, or whether they encourage others to participate, involving even hundreds and thousands of people in making offerings and forming karmic connections. If there's a ruined temple somewhere that needs to be rebuilt, everyone should donate. On the internet, the name of my WeChat account is such and such. It's called Rolling in Wealth. Many people seem to be especially enthusiastic about soliciting donations for these kinds of causes. Some people really have that kind of enthusiasm, but some only solicit donations from others while they themselves are completely unwilling to give even a penny. People really do fall into two different categories. Some people don't really have much money themselves, but they especially love to practice generosity. Even if they only have 100 wen, they will still give away 50 wen of it, or even give it all away without keeping anything for themselves. Some people possess great wealth, but when it comes to giving, they think it's someone else's business. You all should practice more generosity. Give more. But they themselves wouldn't even be willing to pull out a single hair from their own body. When you look at each individual person, it's not really a matter of having money or not having money. It should be about loving to give or not loving to give. There's a definite reason for this. Some people, whether on the internet or elsewhere, are constantly urging others to generate the aspiration to give, but actually they themselves are always just getting others to do things. They themselves don't do it. They don't participate themselves. They only participate in terms of promoting it and spreading the word. Actually, for true generosity, we ourselves should also participate. When practicing generosity, it's best not to have miserliness or regret afterward. Otherwise, you might act on a momentary impulse and give everything away, only to end up regretting it later. In the past, many lay practitioners would go to monasteries and give away absolutely everything in offerings. When it was time to return home, they didn't even have travel expenses. Then they had to ask others for money. It would be better to keep a portion of what you gave earlier. Otherwise, at that time, if you want to get it back from the bodhisattvas won't pay any attention to you. They'll just keep sitting there in meditation like this, including involving hundreds and thousands of people in making offerings and forming karmic connections with them. If they do this, then these kings and others, from kings down to Brahmins, will constantly be universal monarchs for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. If they practice generosity in this way for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, those people who just now formed connections, those who participated, they will become kings of smaller countries. The kings and others who just practice generosity, those who personally did it, will become universal monarchs. The others who participated and formed connections will constantly have the status of kings of smaller countries for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. If in front of the stupas and temples they generate the supreme bodhicitta and dedicate their merit with it, then these kings and all these people will in the end gradually and progressively all attain Buddhahood. So these karmic results are truly immeasurable and infinite. It should be taught in the sutras that there was a young boy in the time of Vipassana Buddha. One person went to make offerings. Because some stupas were damaged, he went to make offerings and repairs. In the end, for 91 kalpas, he never fell into the lower realms. When he obtained human rebirth, his physical body always appeared especially dignified and beautiful. There was also another person like this. Due to the karmic result of repairing a Buddha stupa at that time, he encouraged many people to come together to repair it. He became a great bhikksu who was revered by all. In the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, he was especially respected by many people. and for many kalpas, he never fell into the lower realms. So even just a tiny bit of merit created in past lives can result in immeasurable and infinite karmic rewards in countless future lifetimes. By the same principle, whether in terms of Buddha stupas or Buddha statues, if we damage or destroy these Buddha images, the fault is also extremely great. So for some of us now, we are devout Buddhists, but in the past we didn't understand, and due to ignorance we may have slandered the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and we may even have frequently damaged sutras and Buddha stupas. However, for those of us living in this present era, I think we're still living in a relatively peaceful period. Although when we look at the entire world, the situation is quite severe. Nevertheless, from the perspective of our own personal life experiences, we can consider it relatively peaceful. Perhaps for those who are slightly older than us, that generation, those predecessors, those people in between, they may have experienced various tumultuous eras. At that time, they themselves didn't want to do certain things, but they had no choice. They also experienced many such things. So if we had grown up during that time, we also might have created much negative karma unintentionally or under circumstances beyond our control. We might have created much negative karma as well. So from beginningless time until now, or even in this very lifetime, even before we ourselves had faith, we must learn to repent and purify all the karma we have created. Whether by reciting Vajrasattva mantras or through emptiness or through bodhicitta, by maintaining our practice with these methods, we should try our best to purify everything before we die. At the time of death, we should not have any major obstacles in our lives. Then, after this, the Buddha again told them, furthermore. Furthermore means then or after that. In Tibetan, we say deni. Deni means after that. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in future ages, again, as mentioned before, from kings down to Brahmins, these kinds of people, if they see some sick people, elderly people, and also women in childbirth, perhaps pregnant women, these people, if they encounter these people, actually these people are quite pitiable. Elderly people are very pitiable. Sick people are also very pitiable. Pregnant women and women in childbirth are also very pitiable. If in a single thought moment they generate tremendous compassion toward them and give them medicine, food and drink and bedding, enabling them to attain peace and comfort, the karmic results they obtain, the merit and benefit they obtain are truly inconceivable. For 100 kalpas, they will constantly be lords of the pure heavens. For 200 kalpas, they will constantly be lords of the 6 desire heavens. They will ultimately attain Buddhahood and never fall into the lower realms. Even for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, they will not hear even a single sound of suffering. So this is truly, truly especially important. Especially when we look at it, whether toward elderly people or toward sick people, as well as women in childbirth and pregnant women in the world, if we have the opportunity, we can give them medicine and some food, even if it's just a tiny little bit. If they are able to be freed from suffering, the merit is truly inconceivable. In the Chinese Tripitaka, there is one sutra called The Buddha Speaks of Jyotishka Sutra. It should have been translated during the Liu Song period. I haven't found a Tibetan version. I made an effort to search for it, yet I could not find it. In this sutra, it tells the story of a person who was especially blessed with great merit. What does it say? There was a king who had some ministers under him. Among the ministers, there was one named Jyotishka. Jyotishka was the most blessed with merit. Everything was completely abundant in his house. On one occasion in the royal palace, all the ministers were gathered together. Into the royal palace, the wind blew in something white, like a towel, a particularly fine thing. It was like a face-washing towel in modern times. After all the ministers saw it, everyone was overjoyed and said, "This must be such a fine thing bestowed upon the king by the celestial beings." But Jyotishka didn't say anything. The king asked, what do you say this is?" Jyotishka said, "I dare not deceive the king. Actually, this was not brought by celestial beings. It's the towel I used to wipe my nose in my courtyard." After several more days, into their royal palace, the wind blew in a flower with 9 colors, as big as a cartwheel, an extraordinarily beautiful flower. Many ministers again discussed it among themselves, saying this was an especially auspicious sign. We don't have anything like this in the human realm. It must have been bestowed by celestial beings. But Jyotishka again didn't say anything. The king asked him, and he said, "I dare not deceive the king. Actually, this is a withered flower from my garden that was blown here by the wind." When he explained this, the king became very envious. "I've heard you are very wealthy. Could we possibly go to visit and see for ourselves?" He said yes, and agreed. After agreeing, the king brought 200,000 people with him and went together to the palace of his minister. When they arrived there, it truly was like another world. Wow, the entire world was so especially resplendent and magnificent, extraordinarily perfect and beautiful. When they arrived at the entrance, there stood an extremely dignified young boy. The king asked curiously, "Is this your son?" Jyotishka said, "I'm sorry, this is not mine. This is a doorkeeper, a gatekeeper." Then they encountered an especially beautiful young girl. The king again asked, "Is this your daughter?" He said, "No, this is also another doorkeeper, a female gatekeeper." Then after they went inside, Jyotishka asked his wife to come pay respects to the king. When paying respects to the king, his wife kept crying. The king said, Why does she keep crying like this?" He said, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, on your body there is some smoke smell, which is a bit unbearable." The king said, "That's impossible. Ordinary people use candles which produce smoke, but I use the finest quality materials. It's impossible to have any smoke smell." Jyotishka said, "I'm sorry, but in our house everything is illuminated by luminous jewels. Day or night we have never used anything involving fire, so my wife finds it a bit difficult to bear." Their entire palace had walls made of silver and floors made of crystal. Everywhere was especially resplendent and magnificent, extraordinarily beautiful and wonderful. They had a structure with more than 10 levels, just like many of our modern tall buildings. The king spent 2 months touring around with great curiosity and still hadn't finished. Some ministers said, "Your Majesty, if you don't return now, your kingdom will have fallen into complete disarray. You should really go back. Don't become so immersed here." Finally, they went back. After returning, the king couldn't quite figure it out. "Jyotishka is my subject. Why is there such a great difference between us?" He said, "I want to mobilize the army to deal with them." Many ministers said, yes, it should be done this way. So they prepared an army of 400,000 troops and began marching toward Jyotishka's palace. At that time, at the entrance to that palace, there was a gatekeeper. This gatekeeper was like a Vajra guardian, and he had a Vajra scepter. He simply pointed this Vajra scepter at them slightly, and as a result, the 400,000 troops all collapsed to the ground, both people and horses tumbling over. At this time, Jyotishka rose into the air and said to them, "Ah, why are you all sleeping on the ground? Everyone, get up, get up." In the end, the king realized that he had already been defeated. He then requested that Jyotishka come with him to see the Buddha. They went to the Buddha, and the king asked, "Why does Jyotishka, who is my subject, have such tremendous merit? What is the reason for this?" Then the Buddha explained, "Actually, in Jyotishka's past life, he was a merchant leader of 500 merchants. On the merchant leader's journey back, he saw a sick practitioner. This merchant leader generated compassion toward him and provided him with shelter, food and drink, clothing, everything he needed, all completely provided for him. Due to this karmic result, he is so extraordinarily wealthy in this present life." This efficacy story is quite long, but that's roughly the gist of it. So for a sick person, a practitioner, if we provide them with all kinds of food and necessities, in the end, you see, even the king was envious and jealous. He became such a recipient of these circumstances. So sometimes when we see some sick people or some pitiable people, if we give them a little bit with great compassion, for example, there are indeed some pitiable practitioners who don't have money for medicine and cannot afford medical treatment, or who lack the basic necessities of life. We should definitely give them some support. It is very necessary. It's not that when we practice generosity, we must obtain benefit for ourselves with a transactional mindset. Having a transactional mindset is indeed not good. Sometimes I also have this kind of fault. For example, if some students I sponsored in the past completely ignored me in the end, I felt a bit uncomfortable in my heart. In the past, he used to be so warm, but now he won't even say hello to me. Actually, when I practiced generosity in the past, it should have been without any conditions whatsoever. This kind of generosity is truly good. The commentary on the 10 Stages Sutra also says that the activities of bodhisattvas are all for the benefit of all sentient beings through generosity, not for their own pleasure, not to obtain future life rewards, and not like market transactions. As I just mentioned, not like market transactions means not for one's own happiness, and also not so that in future lives I will have wealth and fame. And even more importantly, it's not like a transaction in the marketplace where I give you alms today, and after a period of time you will repay the kindness, and then I will earn even more, I will gain even more. It shouldn't be like this. So not like market transactions. For many people, their generosity is either for the sake of having a beautiful appearance or happiness in future lives, or perhaps it might be for obtaining even more happiness in this present life and so forth. This kind of motivation for generosity is not very genuine or pure. This is one aspect. There is also another aspect. This kind of generosity we give to sick people, the Buddha in other places, including in the Ekotara Agama and similar texts, said there is no difference from making offerings to the Buddha. This point has also been taught before. How does the Ekotara Agama teach it? If one makes offerings to me as well as to all past Buddhas, if someone makes offerings to me as well as makes offerings to all the Buddhas of the past, the merit from making offerings to me is no different from caring for the sick. The merit from giving alms to me is actually no different from the merit of visiting and caring for sick people. Actually, there is no difference. We might be thinking, if there are gurus endowed with spiritual qualities and merit, I can make offerings to them. But pitiable sick people, I shouldn't do this. Actually, for those who truly possess great merit and blessings, there's no need to add icing on the cake. Sometimes it is very necessary for us to practice generosity toward pitiable sentient beings. This is still extremely important. The merit of caring for sick people is no different from that of making offering to the Buddha. Today, I've explained this principle to you in several different places. In the future, you should understand this clearly. Next, the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are kings down to Brahmins and others, if they are able to practice generosity, their merit and blessings will be immeasurable and infinite. If they dedicate their merit with bodhicitta, then regardless of whether the amount is great or small, this merit will certainly become a cause for ultimately attaining Buddhahood. Not to mention attaining the karmic results of becoming Sakra, Brahma, or a universal monarch. These don't even need to be mentioned. So the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva that you should encourage all sentient beings to also study and practice in this way. We must certainly dedicate our merit with bodhicitta. We must certainly dedicate our merit with an altruistic mind, and then give generously to all sentient beings. This is extremely important. The Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva again, in future ages, if there are good men and good women who create even the smallest amount of virtue within the Buddha Dharma, something as small as a strand of hair, as tiny as a grain of sand, or as minute as a single particle of dust, this kind of merit, the benefit they obtain, cannot be explained through any analogy, especially if it is maintained with bodhicitta, even if it's just offering a single butter lamp, or when we make offerings and practice generosity. It's not how big the material offering is that decides how much merit there is. For example, if one person offers 10,000 yuan with a selfish motivation and a mind of self-glorification, the merit is not necessarily very great. If another person offers or gives just 1 yuan, but they maintain their practice with bodhicitta, then this merit is truly inconceivable. It's just like in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, the story of the poor woman offering a butter lamp. Even the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas have no way to extinguish the lamp. This merit cannot be explained through any analogy. Furthermore, the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are good men and good women who encounter Buddha images, Bodhisattva images, whether they be Thangkas or sculpted statues, and also Pratyeka Buddhas and Shravakas. Regarding Shravakas, they sometimes appear a little bit, sometimes they don't. Images of Shravakas appear relatively infrequently. In the Chinese liturgy of water repentance, and also in the Sutra of Buddha and Bodhisattva names, sometimes there are Shravaka images, like prostrating to such and such Shravaka, but they appear relatively infrequently. Pratyeka Buddhas appear a bit more frequently. Compared with Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas may have a slightly greater altruistic mind. Shravakas don't have a very strong altruistic mind, so when they often join the assemblies of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, sometimes they just can't quite keep up. Images of Pratyeka Buddhas, as well as universal monarchs, still possess very great merit and blessings in the worldly realm. If one makes offerings and gives generously, the merit and blessings obtained are immeasurable and infinite. infinite. They will enjoy supreme and wonderful happiness in the human and celestial realms for a very long time. If they are able to dedicate this merit to the Dharma realm and dedicate it with bodhicitta, then the merit and blessings of this person cannot be described through analogies. They cannot be explained through any analogy whatsoever. In the past, as taught in the Sutra of the causes and conditions of the thousand Buddhas, the karmic conditions to become thousand Buddhas of the fortunate aeon, is that there was a person in the past who at that time, along with others, became 1,000 young boys. On one occasion, they saw someone holding a Buddha image in his hands, so they used lotus flowers to make offerings. Through this aspiration and merit, they created the karmic conditions to become the 1,000 Buddhas of the fortunate aeon in the future. So sometimes perhaps even a very small offering can bring about immense merit. In the story of Prince Mahasattva, in the past, when he was the son of a Brahman, he and a Brahman girl made offerings with a flower and made aspirations together. For this reason, in the future, he became King Shuddhodana's son and so forth. These karmic connections are truly inconceivable. Moreover, our aspirations are also extremely important. Every day when we recite the King of Aspiration prayers, it's not possible to visualize throughout the entire time, but at the very least we should think, all the virtue I have accumulated today, I dedicate to all infinite sentient beings throughout the world. At the same time, may I, in all my future lives, be endowed with the 7 perfect qualities and so forth. It's very important to make virtuous aspirations like this. Try your best not to make negative aspirations. This is extremely important. The Buddha then told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are good men and good women who encounter Mahayana sutras such as the Diamond Sutra, Ksitigarbha Sutra, as well as the Lotus Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra, over these past several years, we have also taught many Mahayana sutras. If they hear just one verse or even just one sentence regarding one verse here, as we've discussed before, it's like all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. They are subject to the law of arising and ceasing. When arising and ceasing have ceased, the bliss of nirvana is revealed. Verses like these, or there are some individual verses within this sutra, or even just a single sentence from them, a single sentence like, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. If we generate an extremely sincere and earnest mind toward it, an extremely joyful mind, a respectful mind, a mind of praise, and then praise it, respect it, give generously to it, and make offerings to it, then the karmic results this person obtains are immeasurable and infinite. If they dedicate this virtue with bodhicitta, then their merit and blessings are even more inconceivable. So these kinds of Mahayana sutras, it's like in the past with Master Vasubandhu, when he was memorizing sutras and treatises, a pigeon heard them. In the end, the karmic results were truly inconceivable. Also in the past, it seems to be taught in a sutra, there was a person who washed his hands before reciting the Avatamsaka Sutra. The water from washing his hands drowned some insects. As a result, these insects were reborn in the celestial realms. Then they came back to repay this kindness. There were all kinds of merits. So sometimes for us, for example, when listening to sutra teachings or participating Dharma assemblies, at that time, if there are some animals or creatures nearby, they can also benefit from it. It's also the same for us human beings. For example, people who don't have faith, of course, in our institute, since it is, after all, a Buddhist institute, there really aren't people who have no faith at all. But when I go to other places, I frequently hold Dharma assemblies and give teachings to people. I encourage them to bring along their children and elderly family members. Although during the process of teaching the Dharma, having some children listening there can be extremely noisy, with crying in the middle, making noise, all kinds of different situations. But after all, if they have this kind of karmic connection when they are young, it will have a tremendous influence on them for their entire life. Perhaps they might think, when I was very young, I went to listen to such and such teaching with my mother. Although they may not understand what was taught, nevertheless for them, it's also extremely important transformation for him. Even if they don't have this conscious memory, the sound of Dharma teachings reaching their ears is also extremely important. At our site, there are frequently children and elderly people. In that way, there may be certain difficulties because after all, it's a Buddhist institute. But ordinarily, we have radios or computers. If your family members nearby, even people without faith, listen a bit more to these illusory sounds. Even if they find it annoying in their hearts, it still has meaning. Whether they understand it or not, it's still beneficial. Some people without faith might ask, what are you listening to here? This is so annoying. They might be like this. On the surface, they are annoyed, but actually for them, it's still beneficial. After that, the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are good men and good women who encounter stupas, monasteries, as well as Mahayana sutras, if there are some that are newly built, newly constructed, and they make offerings, pay respects, praise them, and join their palms reverently, this merit is also extremely great. Or if good men and good women encounter some that are not new, but rather relatively old, or even some that have been damaged, and they repair and restore them, if one person alone can generate this aspiration, of course that's very good. If one person alone cannot generate this aspiration, then encourage many people to generate the aspiration together to restore damaged Buddha stupas and Buddhist monasteries. These people, for 30 lifetimes, will constantly be kings of smaller countries. The patron who just gave generously, the Dana patron, the one who personally gave generously or repaired, the one who independently generated the aspiration, this person will constantly be a universal monarch, and those who formed virtuous connections with them, they will be taught and transformed through virtuous Dharma. The kings of those smaller countries just mentioned, as well as their citizens, all of these people will be able to benefit. Furthermore, the Buddha told Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, if in future ages there are good men and good women who plant virtuous roots within the Buddha Dharma, even if it's just listening to one teaching session or doing one session of recitation, some people say, recitation cannot be interrupted. If it's interrupted, that's not good. The Dharma protectors won't be happy. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas won't be happy. Actually, it's not like that at all. If there's an interruption, it's okay as long as you don't give it up forever. Giving it up forever might not be very good. Actually, people really do have this kind of fluctuating mind. Their minds do change. For example, for a period of time, you really want to recite the Diamond Sutra. For a period of time, you don't have much interest in it. For a period of time, you really want to do prostrations. People really do have many faults, always seeking novelty and getting bored with the old. But ultimately speaking, it would be best to maintain all of these practices. Temporarily, perhaps due to your afflictions manifesting, illness, or your mood not being good, perhaps for a period of time, if there are some interruptions, I think this is probably unavoidable. If your practice is especially good, perhaps every day can be like one continuous day. There won't be any rising and falling emotions. But some people, due to afflictions, due to environment, due to work, due to family, all kinds of different pressures, so for a period of time, they themselves feel their practice is going very well. From now on, I'm going to make such and such aspiration. Some Buddhists, when they're happy, they make all kinds of virtuous aspirations. Then they start to prepare, arranging their time schedule. What time I'll get up in the morning, what time I'll sleep at night. From now on, I must definitely practice in a regular, systematic way. I must definitely do this and that year-round. After another period of time passes, when just a slight affliction arises, everything has already been completely overturned. They don't even have any interest in eating. They're extremely sad. Actually, ordinary beings are sometimes really quite pitiable. If only a positive state of mind could continue on like that forever, we should be able to become very good people. However, it probably has a certain relationship with a person's merit and blessings. We must definitely persevere. We shouldn't give up halfway when we reach a certain point and then never be able to get back up again. This kind of situation is the most frightening and most pitiable. Generally speaking, it's normal to have some changes within ourselves, some interruptions in the middle, some regression. At that time, we shouldn't be afraid. For us ordinary beings, on the surface, perhaps many people don't appear to have any regression or changes, but actually every single person has afflictions and every single person has shortcomings. So at that time, we don't need to be especially nervous or afraid. So it says here, if good men and good women within the Buddha Dharma plant even a tiny little virtuous root, plant just a tiny bit of virtue, even if it's just reciting Avalokiteshvara mantra once, or reciting the Heart Sutra once, or offering a butter lamp in front of Buddha statues, or doing a few prostrations every day, all of these virtuous dharmas, we must never give them up forever. If we give them up forever, then at that time, our own habitual tendencies are not very good to begin with. If you grew up in places like Tibetan region or Bhutan, if you grew up in these kinds of places, at the very least, their understanding of karmic cause and effect won't change. Because from the time they were young, it has a certain relationship with their life structure. So when they grow up in this kind of living environment, probably in terms of the big picture, there won't be especially great changes. But for some of us, the environment we grew up in from childhood, the education we received, the people around us basically don't have faith. We ourselves, with great difficulty, like lightning flashing in the darkness of night, develop a tiny bit of virtuous mind. But this virtuous mind is also extremely weak, just like a butter lamp in a fierce wind. At any moment, it can be destroyed or blown out. So we ourselves still need to learn to protect our own virtuous mind. At the same time, some of our Dharma friends must definitely help others. When others appear to be losing faith, or when their behavior is somewhat not in accordance with the Dharma, if it's relatively convenient for us, we should frequently encourage and guide them. When encouraging them, some people truly, after being encouraged originally, they were in the process of falling, but because at that time some people gave them a hand, they pulled them out. In this way, they themselves have already stabilized in the end. Every single person will encounter pitfalls in their life, or perhaps pitfalls in their spiritual practice. Originally, you were on the right path, but if you're not careful, you might fall into a bottomless abyss. So we must definitely observe the people around us. When we see people around us losing faith, we should try our best to help others. So then, regarding these people within the Buddha Dharma, whether giving generously, making offerings, or repairing stupas and monasteries, or organizing and restoring sutras, for example, repairing stupas, some damaged ones, or creating those, organizing or restoring some sutras. Actually, we have many Buddhist texts that are especially precious ancient collections and classics. In foreign countries, some nations place special emphasis on restoring these ancient texts. Even if a sutra has just a tiny bit of damage, they use all kinds of high-tech methods to repair that one page, to restore it. They might expend tremendous manpower and financial resources. We might be like, for example, something especially ancient, something especially precious, like an edition from the Qianlong period. We don't particularly value it. So in terms of preserving ancient texts, I think Asian people don't particularly value. Among Asians, people in very few specific places seem not to particularly value this. So in the future, even if it's just a little bit of a guru's teaching, just a tiny little bit of instruction, as I've said before, as for my own aspiration regarding my guru's teachings, even if it's just a joke, a simple sentence, it would be best if they don't disappear from this world, even if people nowadays might not necessarily gain tremendous benefit from them, but after another 10 years, 20 years, after 100 years, 200 years pass, perhaps they will be extremely beneficial to sentient beings, because the aspirations and aspiration power of some gurus are truly inconceivable. They are beneficial to sentient beings of different eras. So for us now, for example, Mifam Rinpoche, Omniscient Longchenpa, even just one piece of their instruction is extremely precious, like Omniscient Longchenpa. It's already been more than 600 years since he departed from this world. But many people who have received his blessings, even just one short teaching from him, is like obtaining a wish-fulfilling jewel made of gold. All beings feel a deep longing for it. So I think that for these sutras and instructions, and also for these especially precious texts, everyone should make a conscious effort to collect and preserve them in the libraries or museums. Whether it is a library or a museum of cultural relics, it is best to obtain official recognition, because government officially recognized libraries generally are not easily damaged or destroyed. If it's under an individual's name, perhaps at a certain time, it can be easily destroyed. Originally, I had a thangka, which was given to me by Tulku Detsa. It should be a very famous thangka. Later, I gave it to a government cultural relic museum. I thought that temporarily it might be relatively more secure. But I don't know the specific situation. So sometimes, perhaps, for our relatively precious things, we shouldn't keep them in our own pockets. Otherwise, when you die, your relatives might burn them or give them to others. That's possible. For the most precious things, it's still better to place them in somewhere with official protection. For example, in places like the British Museum, many precious texts and artifacts from different historical periods are preserved. So this can also be called organizing and restoring sutras, even if it's just a hair, a particle of dust, a grain of sand, a drop of water, just a tiny little bit, even just a tiny little bit within this, even generating the aspiration for just a single moment, or reciting Namo Amitabha Buddha once or Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, even if it's just reciting Om Mani Padme Hum or Om Vajrasattva Hum, accumulating little by little. It's not saying that we should do lot all at once. It's just like how some people do business nowadays. As long as they don't lose money, if they earn just a little bit at a time, they can sustain themselves. I see that some people nowadays, the most successful business people, they are not insatiably greedy. They don't say, I must absolutely earn this much or that much. It's not like that. They just build up their success little by little. So our virtuous roots are also like this. We must learn to accumulate them drop by drop, bit by bit. If these kinds of virtuous deeds are dedicated to the Dharma realm, this person's merit for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes will enable them to experience this kind of supreme, wonderful bliss. If they dedicate the merit to their own family members, if they dedicate it thinking, may I be healthy, or may my family members be safe and sound, or dedicate it for their own personal benefit, if they dedicate it in this way, such karmic results will only bring happiness for 3 lifetimes. Just now, the result is experiencing wonderful bliss for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes. But if we dedicate all this merit thinking, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I be safe, in this way, then we will only experience happiness for 3 lifetimes. So this is called, to give one is to receive 10,000-fold in return. Regarding this phrase, to give one is to receive 10,000-fold in return, when I was translating it, I spent a very long time on it. I also consulted various different ancient commentaries from the past, but they weren't particularly easy to understand. What is it that they're abandoning? It means relying on bodhicitta. They could obtain 10,000 karmic results, which is especially abundant. You see, if you maintain your practice with bodhicitta, then for hundreds of thousands of kalpas you will experience happiness. But if you only dedicate the merit for your own personal benefit, then you have abandoned the bodhicitta, and the opportunity to gain 10,000 rewards is lost. At that time, this was how I explained it. This way might be a bit better. I also consulted various different ancient interpretations and explanatory methods of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Each person's explanation is different, but some of them may have indeed explained it incorrectly. Because earlier in the text it says, if one maintains their practice with bodhicitta, they obtain thousands upon thousands of karmic results. If they dedicate their merit with a selfish and self-interested mind, then they only obtain just a tiny little bit of karmic result. So they have abandoned something tremendously great, the most important opportunity. So what Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is saying is that the karmic conditions of practicing generosity are actually just like this. The difference is indeed this tremendous. And so we finished teaching this. Well, that's pretty good. So this chapter is now complete. Then there are still 2 or 3 more chapters. Chapter 12 might be a bit longer. Chapters 11 and 13 are relatively shorter. That's what I remember. That's all for today's teaching.
Bandangara Badna Sadarda Bandangara Badna Sada Bandangara Badna Sadarda